The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Since the midterm elections of a couple of weeks ago, the topic of the Keystone XL pipeline has become more and more of a topic of discussion amongst both Republicans and Democrats. We've done interviews in the past, and we recently updated you on the jobs numbers, and we made clear that all of the data suggests that the Keystone XL pipeline would create only 50 permanent jobs. Now, Fox News said, and we talked about it earlier this week, that it would create tens of thousands of jobs, and we looked into it, and that's just not true. The Keystone XL pipeline's construction would support, during the time of construction, maybe tens of thousands of jobs, but a job supported is not a job created. It now turns out that even that number appears to be false. Only 3,900 workers will actually be required to build the pipeline to carry oil from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico, according to the United States State Department. And those jobs will last only a year. So we started running the numbers, and a bunch of people have done this. TransCanada, which is the company that wants to build this pipeline, claims the effort will create 13,000 construction jobs. Even TransCanada, though, only predicts that it will take about 7 million hours of labor. So if you have 3,400 workers and you divide that over a year, that would mean that it would be full-time work for those 3,400 to 3,900 people. If you have 13,000 workers doing these 7 million hours of labor, it means that they're working very part-time or only 3 months out of the year. That's not even really supporting that many jobs, Louis.
Nope, not at all. The numbers on this one are just ridiculous. Clearly, the only reason that this is so popular is because it has the backing of big oil and big energy, and the misinformation is just rampant. I think, unfortunately, that this will probably end up on the president's desk. I hope he shuts it down.
And every time we talk about this, I get emails from people who say, David, you're ignoring the fact, they use the word fact, that the Keystone XL pipeline will lower oil and gas prices for us. This is a good thing. More and more reports say that that's not even true. CNN Money has reported, quote, gas prices might go up, not down. Right now, a lot of oil being produced in Canada and North Dakota has trouble reaching the refineries and terminals on the Gulf. Since that supply can't be sold abroad, it reduces the competition for it to Midwest refineries that can pay lower prices to get it. Giving away Canadian oil access to the Gulf means the glut in the Midwest goes away, actually making it more expensive for the region. Bloomberg saying completion of the Keystone pipeline would raise prices at the pump in the Midwest and Rocky Mountains 10 to 20 cents a gallon. We need to stop this, Louis, because even the reasons for doing this, economic stimulus and jobs, 50 jobs created, 3,900 jobs supported during a year. It'll lower prices for gas and oil. No, it appears that regionally it will actually raise them. We really need to proactively do everything we can to ensure this doesn't happen.
And the whole reason we're bringing all of this up is that even if it would have a few positive benefits, there's no way it outweighs the almost certain economic disasters that it will cause. Or sorry, not economic. I should say, natural disasters. It could cause. It could cause a lot of pollution, a lot of harm in a lot of areas.
We often talk about systemic racism, structural racism, and racist policies that politicians might have. But every once in a while, we get straight up, old-fashioned, interpersonal racism. And this comes to us today in the form of a fire chief in Kentucky who is being criticized after recent comments where he said he would not help a family of stranded motorists because they were black, and later suggested that an Asian American reporter did not understand English. This is Bullitt County Sheriff's Deputy. Let me back up. In Bullitt County, we had a sheriff's deputy's camera that actually has Fire Chief Julius Hatfield discussing a car accident. I'm going to play the audience for you. And when he's asked to get help for a family of black people that were involved, he said, "We ain't taking no niggers here." I have the audio. The audio is not super clear. I will play it for you, and then we'll talk about it more. Let's listen.
Well, I got a family of 4 from Cincinnati I got to do something with.
We're also not helped by the fact that it was bleeped, and since he was not standing that close to the officer, we couldn't really hear it that well, but that is indeed what he says. He laughs and says that they are not going to be helping black people, apparently because they are black. Later, when WDRV's Valerie Chin tried to talk to him about the financial management of Southeast Bullet Fire Department at a town meeting, he kept suggesting she doesn't understand English, apparently because she's an Asian woman. This is a guy who's a disgrace in a position that should be a respected position, someone who is in charge of a department, the fire department, that is meant to be helping and saving people and doing something positive for communities. And this is someone who should be not in this role, Lewis. What a disgusting individual.
Yeah. You know, sometimes when I hear about stories like this, I think about the movie Crash. And let's say that, you know, he is for some reason responding to a car that's been turned over, the car's on fire, and there's a black person trapped in it. Would he pull that person out of that car, or would he let them burn?
Here it seems it was more like, hey, he doesn't want to be inconvenienced by sending people to help the black people. But the scenario you bring up is a much more specific one, which is if he has the opportunity to save a black person, does he do it? These are such heinous and disgusting comments that I would question whether he would in that circumstance.
I would too. And that's exactly why he shouldn't have this job. If we have to ask ourselves those questions, clearly someone else should be having, should take over for him.
Have you ever had conversations with people in real life, Lewis, where they express this level of racism? And if we were to rank the racism, right, we would say, oh, here's someone who is indifferent to the plight of minorities, right? That's on one end of the spectrum. Another end of the spectrum would be like the most extreme thing of, I wouldn't pull someone out of a burning vehicle, even if I could, if they're black, because I don't believe in helping black people. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff in the middle, right? What have you experienced personally?
I've heard, maybe not, if I haven't necessarily been in the conversation.
Easy there, Lewis. Don't, it seems like this question's got you agitated because you're going nuts.
No, I haven't been when these conversations start, I make sure I'm not a part of them.
Right.
But I have definitely been standing around with listening to way more racist stuff than this.
Oh, really? So even more than I wouldn't pull a black person out of a burning vehicle if I could save him.
Shoot them dead, genocide, you name it.
You know what? I was wrong. I created a spectrum that did not even encompass the proactive killing of people that are part of a minority group. Yeah, no, I forgot about that. Yeah, no, the spectrum is broad, and I've probably personally witnessed most of what you could imagine over the 30 years I've been on this planet.
Yeah, and I mean people genuinely wanting to kill people of another race. I have heard them say that. Would they do it if it came down to it? If they could pull the trigger, would they?
Maybe not, but they're at least willing to even say that publicly.
Right. And that's, I think perhaps most of us have heard people say things like that.
Follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/dpacman.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show membership program is made possible in part by liberalbias.com. When conservatives unskew liberally biased numbers, they can prove some pretty amazing facts. For example, did you know that President Obama has driven unemployment up to 50%? You're probably not hearing that from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Find out more at liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day is Elizabeth Scott. Elizabeth, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. We really do depend on members like Elizabeth to support our program and to keep us on the air. You can become a member at davidpakman.com/membership. And remember that as the holiday buying season ramps up, any shopping you plan to do on Amazon.com could also be supporting our program if you go to davidpakman.com and click on the Amazon banner on the right side of the page. Then just do your shopping. It doesn't cost you any more, but it will send us a little kickback, and it helps our program. This week in show history, 2 years ago, Walmart workers planned to strike on Black Friday, protesting low wages. This sparked a Walmart public relations campaign, and we focused on the terrible media coverage and the softball interviews. On Fox, a Walmart spokesperson was asked, "Can you sue the strikers?" Talk about populism, talk about standing up for labor. This year, Walmart workers are planning their biggest strike ever. They are expecting strikes in 1,600 stores. We have to ask the question, Lewis, after years of these strikes, will these ever be effective, or can Walmart always just hire more people?
I think Walmart will. I think Walmart will be fine. I don't know how effective these strikes will be. I mean, it seems they haven't been effective in the past, but some of those people can't. If they could get everyone who works for Walmart to go on strike, of course, it would have a huge impact. But people can't just. Some people can't afford to do that.
We've been hugely critical of Black Friday and just the kind of corporatist buying frenzy insanity that it represents in our culture. But from the point of view of workers, Black Friday actually creates a situation where striking workers on one day can really cause havoc because, yes, a long-term strike, you can replace employees. But can Walmart really have, I don't know, backup employees ready for such a big sales day like Black Friday? I feel like that's a day where workers can actually make an impact by not showing up.
Exactly. It becomes a bargaining tool, one of the few days where these workers actually have some leverage. And although these strikes will probably ultimately be futile, perhaps if it stresses out the execs and a little bit, well, maybe it accomplishes something.
1 year ago this week, New York City raised the smoking age from 18 to 21. Since this announcement, we haven't really heard of other states doing the same thing. There was a proposed tobacco ban in Westminster, Massachusetts. Many people were quick to call it unconstitutional. And the thing about these tobacco bans is that it would be a benefit to most people, especially smokers. The only people who would really get hurt would be the tobacco companies and the farmers. But at the same time, Lewis, we still hear from individuals who say this is violating my freedom. This is unconstitutional. You can't do this. You can't do this. I want my cigarettes, even though it is a self-harming and self-defeating activity.
Think about if we were to create a new product and I were to take some type of botanical, put it into the form of something smokable or consumable, fill it with harmful chemicals, known carcinogens, addictive products, tell the public that it causes cancer, and then try to package it and sell it.
It would never get approved, would it?
No, of course not.
So then the question is, how did we get to the status quo with cigarettes? And it's because, well, when we first created cigarettes, we didn't know everything we know now. Once we started figuring it out, money poured into lobbying groups that were counteracting that with issues of freedom and the ability of restaurants to continue making profit by allowing smoking inside. And we created this whole industrial establishment where you're completely right, Lewis. If now we said, hey, I've got something new, it's just as harmful as cigarettes, it causes cancer, it has all sorts of heinous chemicals in it, and I want to sell it to people who are 18 years of age or older, I can only assume it would never happen.
Yeah, there's no way it would ever happen. And even smokers would probably be against it. But you know, I'm hoping that we can shift to marijuana instead of, tobacco. But it's going to be hard to rid ourselves of the tobacco giants because they're already planning their domination of the marijuana market. And
let's not be unclear. Smoking marijuana, aside from the impact of the marijuana, the THC itself, smoking anything is not good for your lungs. We know that. So we're not pretending like, oh, just smoke marijuana and everything's fine. We've seen studies about brain development. Of course, when we talk about the legality of marijuana, if cigarettes are legal, there is no conceivable explanation that makes sense to me as to why marijuana is not legal, except for lobbying interests and corporate interests.
Cigarettes have no health benefits, but marijuana can.
Yeah, no question about that at all. 1 year ago this week, Costco was prompted to apologize after labeling Bibles as fiction. there was outrage across the country. And when it comes to Bible outrage, Fox News was, of course, at the front lines. They were angry too. Maybe religious texts should have their own section, not fact or fiction, because empirically speaking, the Bible is a form of fiction, isn't it?
It is, of course. That's, could you say that's subjective? I don't know. Maybe that's being too generous. But I would ask this question, and I don't think we asked it when we talked about this a year ago. Should Costco even sell the Bible at all?
Well, what would be the argument for why they shouldn't? I mean, it's a book. It's a book that is available for purchase. It's a popular book, and Costco sells books. So
it's
why...
a good business decision. I mean, it's a good business decision. But if Costco believes that it is a fictional book and they are unable to label it as such.
But was it Costco, Lewis, that believed it was a fictional book? I seem to recall that it was more of a, it could have been a labeling mishap that came from the publisher already with that sticker.
No, it was Costco. I mean, what it could have been was an individual store or an individual manager who decided to do that. So perhaps not Costco as a whole, but I know the Bible is the best-selling book of all time, and it will clearly sell if you are in the book market. But if you believe that the book does more harm than good, perhaps you should ignore that profit and just not sell the book.
Costco has made it clear that they value paying employees well and reducing turnover much more than Walmart. But that doesn't mean that they have any kind of ideological problem with selling Bibles.
Probably not. And I'm sure they will continue to sell Bibles, and that's fine. It makes sense. Like I said, it's a good business decision. But overall, perhaps stores that carry books should consider not selling certain religious texts, or just stop selling all religious texts.
I'm wondering whether, like, the local bookshops, like the ones I check out whenever I'm back in Massachusetts, I never even go over to the religion section, but if they have Bibles, that's probably where they are, right?
Yeah, probably. I'm sure there are plenty of bookstores who don't sell, Dianetics along with their other religious texts, and they should ask themselves why they are not doing that, and then review the other books.
There's a Christian Science reading room, not Scientology, but Christian Science in Northampton, Massachusetts. And oftentimes I go to a restaurant that's nearby there, and when I walk by, I just think to myself, how is this even here? And it's been there for decades. It's incredible.
Yeah, you should stop in sometime and just check it out.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll both stop in when we're up there for Thanksgiving. We'll see what they have going on over there.
Yeah. All right, let's do that.
All of a sudden, when you have to go too, you're not as into it. I understand that. All right.
It's way funnier if we make you do it.
That is, yeah, but there wouldn't be anyone to talk about what it was like.
Or you'll have to film the whole thing.
Right, yeah, by myself. Okay, that was 1 year ago in show history. We have a great program for you today. Just a fantastic interview is coming up next. We'll answer your questions later on in the program. And of course, we have a great bonus show planned for you as well. Follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/dpacman.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
We're going to go back to February 10th of 2010 with this week's classic interview. And the connection to this interview is that we've been talking so much about not only broader fights against violence, including what's going on with ISIS and so many other extremist groups all over the world, but with talk of, are we back in Iraq? Are we not back in Iraq? Discussions of war, genocide, etc. We once interviewed Professor Ervin Staub from the University of Massachusetts. This was in our first studio at Valley Free Radio in Northampton, Massachusetts. And we talked about the question of, to get to our point of human development and societal development, would war, terrorism, and mass killing be an avoidable characteristic of society, or will inevitably a society figure out, hey, we could accomplish our goals more quickly if we start killing others? That was the premise for this 2010 interview with Professor Ervin Staub, And I think it is very relevant right now, given what is going on around the world. So let's take a listen to that. Let's watch that classic interview from 2010. We have in studio with us Ervin Staub, professor of psychology at the University of Massachusetts down the road from us, and founding director of the Psychology of Peace and Prevention of Violence PhD at UMass. Thanks for coming down on with not great weather. Right? It's not the blizzard that was predicted, but it's not great, right?
It's not great, but it's not too bad.
So when we think about, well, you're originally from Hungary, and you spent some time in Austria. How did you eventually get to the United States?
Well,
And we need as close to the microphone as you can get is the best.
I escaped from Hungary after the revolution there in 1956, when the borders were not guarded as before. I went to Austria, and I immediately wanted to come to the States, but it took some time to get a visa. So I lived there for 2.5 years. I went to school there for a while, and then I got a visa to the States, so I came here.
And what was the first thing you did when you got here?
Well, the first thing I did was I got a job in Minnesota, in St. Paul, at a community workshop, making seats and bags for tractors. That lasted for about 2 months, and then I managed to get to the university, and I finished my undergraduate education at the University of Minnesota. And then I went on to Stanford to get a PhD in psychology there.
You liked the weather in California, I assume.
Very much so.
So when we think about the origins of mass violence, I was just yesterday, actually, I'm reading a book by Arthur C. Clarke, science fiction type of book. And interestingly enough, in the book, he mentions when we think about if we could start from scratch with intelligent beings, is there any way that we could get to the equivalent level of intelligence that humans are without going through mass violence, murder, or genocide? The argument in the book was that it's impossible, that to get to where humans are, somehow people will think of, hey, we can exterminate people we don't like, and it will be just a part of the culture. Do you agree? Is it possible? Or if we started from scratch, could we fine-tune things to avoid mass violence and genocide?
You know, we don't really know what has gone on a very, very long time ago, but there have been some optimistic thinkers studying that time, prehistory, which they describe as very cooperative and collaborative. And in fact, a lot of the human tendencies that we have arose out of cooperation between people. In order to face nature, in order to find what we need for sustenance, people needed to cooperate. I don't think that mass violence is a necessity, that it is something that humans had to engage in order to develop. In fact, in very old times, people were in small groups. They collaborated within the group. It's unclear that they needed to fight against other groups at that level in order to be able to sustain themselves. And actually, most of the time, that's not why we do it. One of the more important sources of people turning against other groups is ideology, especially in the modern age. We have a vision of how the world should be. We have a vision of social relationships. And then we identify some people as standing in the way of that vision. And in order to fulfill that vision, we deal with this group, often by trying to exterminate them. I don't think that in old periods, very long time ago, people were that ideologically oriented, that they were that influenced by the power of ideas as we are today.
Do you think that right now there's a big deal made on two fronts? Number one, we have people, many in the U.S. and the Western world, who say a lot of the conflict we see now is because of what the Muslim religion teaches. At the same time, we have people saying the reason that many in the Middle East want to so-called terrorize the West is because of the foreign policy of the United States and of allies of the U.S. But can both of these things be true? Do you disagree that either is a factor? Where would you come down? I guess religion and foreign policy, how do those two things play in?
Well, I think that those and other things are all involved. But it's not religion as such. It's not religion itself. It is the way religion can be used, has often been used, and right now it is used by some groups, some elements within Islam. I mean, we know that religion preaches love and practices love, and religion is also a tremendous divider. If you look at any religion, in the name of that religion, people have done terrible things. I mean, look at Christianity, look at the Inquisition, look at the Crusades, not only going to fight Muslims in Jerusalem, but also along the way killing a lot of Jews. That was a perfectly normal thing to do as part of the Crusades. So every religion has occasionally created not only this division between us and them, that we are the right way to worship God, but also violently turned against others. And right now there is a stream in Islam, jihadism, which preaches this, a very severe form of Islam, and everybody else who doesn't practice that, even Muslims who don't practice that form of Islam, are regarded in a negative way as enemies.
From within the Muslim community.
Within the Muslim community. Terrorism started with groups, in particular in Egypt, for example, turning against the near enemy. The ideology was to go against Muslim countries where the leaders did not live up to the ideals of Islam that these people believed in. So first they turned against the near enemy, like the government in Egypt. Then they shifted and turned against the far enemy. And the far enemy is the United States and other countries. Now, what about our policies?
Right.
What about our practices? Well, for one thing, they turned against us because we support the repressive Muslim dictatorships that don't live up to the ideals of Islam. So
we support them on one front, and at the same time, in another way, we're publicly critical of not giving rights to women, and so it's two-sided, right?
Well, we are, but we are more critical now as a result of terrorism that we were before. Before, we were just supporting Egypt. We were just supporting Saudi Arabia and other countries, financially supporting Egypt to a very large degree, and being allies to all these other countries. So that's one problem. But there are other problems also. The other problems include some of our activities. For example, in Iraq, we supported Saddam Hussein, a very repressive and violent dictator.
We know the picture of Donald Rumsfeld shaking hands with Saddam Hussein.
That's right. But then, after Kuwait, we turned against Saddam Hussein. We had the first Iraq war, and then we continued with sanctions that created great harm to the Iraqi people. Not to Saddam Hussein as such, but to the Iraqi people.
Moving them back technologically 50 years, is that too? I mean, many years we moved them backwards.
And depriving children of medicine and all kinds of other things, and resulting in a lot of death. And people in our country on the right were saying, well, it's not our fault, it's Saddam Hussein's fault because of the things that he's doing. But we were the one who maintained these sanctions, and that's one of the reasons that people are so angry. Just now, very recently, you heard about this man who blew up a number of CIA officials,
right.
A Jordanian, who first acted as if he was an agent for Jordan, but then clearly he was a double agent, and he blew up a number of CIA people. And his wife said that when the United States invaded Iraq, and in the course of that invasion, a lot of civilians, everyday people, were killed.
No question about it.
And we heard very little about it because of the way our media has been operating during the Iraq war. But according to his wife, that turned him. He got tremendously identified with these people who, as a result of our invasion, were suffering. The civilians, the innocent people who were suffering that. And that was, according to her, the time when he really shifted toward jihadi causes. So I think it's fair to say that both of those things, at the very least, have been involved.
To remind our audience, if you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Ervin Staub, professor of psychology at the University of Massachusetts down the road from us. To shift gears a little bit, you were called as an expert witness in the Abu Ghraib case in 2005. Is that right?
I don't remember the year, but yes, I was called as an expert witness. Yes.
Well, number one, how did they find you?
Well, you know, I have done this kind of work in relation to violence by groups for a very long time, and so they must have found me through my past work.
And to what extent did they want to talk to you? Meaning, on who were you testifying for? Was it for which side? And what kind of questions did they ask you?
I was testifying for one of the defendants. And the reason I agreed to testify, by the way, was because the whole focus was on these bad guys.
These bad U.S. troops.
These bad particular U.S. guards,
right.
U.S. soldiers, military police who became guards at Abu Ghraib, and as if it was just these individuals. But as many people have said, and I very much believe, it is the system that was created around them that had a tremendous influence. And this system included, well, anyway, how I got involved was I was asked by the defense attorneys. There was a civilian defense attorney and there was a military defense attorney. And they worked together. And they asked me to be a defense witness. And so I agreed, and I prepared the case, and I developed some materials. And then I testified in front of the military jury and the judge, and of course the prosecutors and the defense witnesses. And basically I was describing the system that existed there. And that system included superior officers who saw all kinds of things going on and said nothing and did nothing. Now, when there are no rules that are maintained in a system where there are people in power and others over whom these people have power, then that tends to develop into greater use of power and force by those who have power.
And there is a difference between superiors seeing what's going on and saying nothing compared to instructing to do some of the things that they're seeing, right? There is a difference.
Yes, but both have happened.
Both have happened.
On the one hand, they were seeing the guards keeping prisoners naked in their cells,
right,
which is an abusive itself,
yes,
and just passing by, not doing anything. But on the other hand, Rumsfeld has given permission to use certain kinds of very severe interrogation techniques in Guantanamo.
Right.
And these techniques then shifted over, as some of the personnel moved over to Abu Ghraib, shifted over to Abu Ghraib. And they were using these very severe techniques for interrogation. And the interrogators were asking the guards to soften up the prisoners for the interrogation.
Right.
So the combination of some of these actual instructions and influences and the laxness of the system. And there were also a couple other elements. For example, there were rocket attacks on the prison.
Right.
And there were some prison riots. And these were frustrating for the guards. So these three things, the frustration of the guards, or their lack of training, they weren't trained to be military prison guards, the lax supervision, the lack of rules established by higher officers, and then this actual guidance to soften up the prisoners, all combined, making it a very forceful set of circumstances.
And these factors, you're not, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not saying that they're completely exculpatory, but they may be mitigating factors when thinking about the sentence, right?
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
and you're not saying that they should have received no punishment because of this situation that was created.
No, I am not saying that. But what I am saying is, the thing is, there are very powerful forces often working on people who then engage in violence.
Right.
They still have choices. The fact that there are those forces doesn't excuse their behavior. But it's very important to look at those conditions.
We have a cell phone going up. That's, bad radio etiquette, right?
How do you turn this off?
Yeah, I wonder the same thing myself. It's a good song, though.
It is going to stop in a second.
I
should have turned it off. I'm sorry.
That's okay. There we go. Oh, it's back on. There, that was the final chime. No problem. We've been speaking with Ervin Staub, professor of psychology at the University of Massachusetts. Thank you so much for coming in today.
You're welcome.
We will take a break, and then we will be back with more after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
It is Friday. We have some audience questions to answer for you. The first one is from Sam. Sam says, "Hey David, I've been watching the show for a couple of years now, and I've noticed there seems to be a running joke about Lewis having billions of David Pakman Show memberships. Where did that come from?" I think the way this started was when we started the membership program, I said to Lewis once, "Hey Lewis, you're going to be a member, right?" And Lewis said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to get a membership." And maybe Lewis said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to get 2 or something like that." And then with time, every once in a while, I would say, "Lewis, how many memberships do you have at this point?" And Lewis would be like, "Oh, 30 or 40. And then over time, Lewis, it just kept growing and growing to the point where once you said you have, 5 million memberships or something like that.
Yeah, it just was a joke that has gone completely out of control. But it's just kind of funny. It's funny because it's so absurd, and we get a kick out of it.
In all seriousness, though, how many memberships do you have?
I have 0 memberships. That's why it's so funny. Why would I be a member?
Okay, but as far as the calendars go, you really have a lot of those, right?
Actually, no. I'll only be receiving 1 calendar.
Yeah. There's not much more of an explanation other than that. It just kind of grew over time. And I think if we were to plot the number of memberships Lewis claims to have on a chart, it would grow, I would think, exponentially, because it went like 1, 2, 30, 40, 100, 500, several thousand, 100,000, millions, billions. So it really is on quite a growth curve, I'd say.
If I had that many memberships, we would be producing the show from a flying fortress somewhere over, New York City, probably, that would cost billions of dollars that we could pay for because I had purchased billions and billions of memberships.
All right, so a very simple answer to that question from Sam. Keep the questions coming. You can submit them via email or via voicemail, 219-2DavidP, or tweet them to @DavidPakmanShow on Twitter. Next question today is from Cassandra. Cassandra says, "David, is it rude of me to have trouble taking someone seriously at work because I know they have literal Bible beliefs when it comes to religion? I realize I need to treat everyone fairly, but something about taking a coworker's advice on social media strategy when they think there's a man in the sky who oversees us and plans everything and believes Noah's Ark just doesn't make sense to me." Okay, this is a very fair question. Of course, you want to be polite and nice to everybody. In situations where it's a coworker, you, in many cases, might be actually under the supervision of this individual. And if you find out that if you're not a believer, and to you, the story of Noah's Ark doesn't make any sense, you realize it's just an impossible story, and you find out that your coworker believes that literally, it might cause a credibility gap when it comes to taking their advice on other things. And I have mixed feelings about this, Lewis, because on the one hand, I have the same issue. When I meet someone and I find out that they are incredibly devout, literal believers of everything in the Bible, for example, or in the Quran, or the teachings of the Mormon church or whatever, I do say, wait a second, if they're capable of believing that, I need to be very careful about things not related to religion that they say, because someone capable of believing that the Noah's Ark story is literally true could believe any crazy combination of things that wouldn't make any sense to me. At the same time, personal experience tells me that there are many people who hold these beliefs and somehow compartmentalize them completely, where when it comes to religion, they're willing to accept all sorts of stuff in the absence of evidence, but elsewhere they require the same level of evidence and proof that you, me, or anybody else would require. So I actually do have mixed feelings about this. I would say to Cassandra, and then I'll let Lewis comment, I would be suffering from some of the same hesitations as you in taking them seriously about other issues. But at the same time, I know from experience that there are many religious people who can completely separate those beliefs.
That is true. So I would, take instance individually, and if someone who has extreme religious beliefs or just, unbelievable religious beliefs gives you advice on social media strategy, I don't know, maybe take their advice and see if it works. And if it's, if it's not too much of a pain, do what they say you should do. And if it works, well, perhaps now you have someone you can talk to about social media strategy.
And Cassandra didn't say that this was a supervisor. She simply said this is a coworker. So there may not even be a situation where there's kind of like a work dynamic of authority where she needs to be following this person's advice. It sounds like she's just saying, in general, when this particular person gives me advice, I say, aren't you the guy who believes Noah's Ark is literally true? Should I really be listening to you? This is a question that is very, very common, ladies and gentlemen, and we get a lot of emails about it when we do religion stories, because it's very common that unless you work for a religious institution or one that is particularly non-religious, there will be a mix of people with varying levels of literal belief in so-called sacred texts. So this is almost impossible to avoid for most people, unless you have a very specific set of friends and relatives and a very particular job. So I would really open this up to the audience, Lewis, to tell us their thoughts on this.
Yeah, let's get some feedback on this. There are some very smart people out there who have just been brainwashed from a very young age who never snapped out of it.
Last question today is from Evan. Evan says, hey guys, you used to play Korean music on the show and it was pretty funny. North Korean music. Have either of you gotten into K-pop fandom? And if so, who are your favorite artists? So K-pop is Korean pop music. And now when we used to play the North Korean techno, that was very specifically North Korean music. My understanding about K-pop, Lewis, is that it is mostly a South Korean thing. It's South Korea.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
I personally am not at all into K-pop. I couldn't tell you one K-pop artist, so I certainly couldn't tell you what my favorite K-pop artists are. The one thing I came across that I'm not a fan of, but was quite compelling, Lewis, is Japanese. It's like pop metal. What's the name of it? I've sent you some samples of it, Lewis.
Was it baby metal?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was that might have been from Japan.
I know that's Japanese. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not into any of that stuff. I mean, it's I've heard some of the K-pop, and it's what can I say? It's an abomination. It's pretty much it embodies everything I'm against, and I despise it.
What about it do you dislike?
It's just manufactured, formulaic garbage. But maybe I'll get some hate mail on this. But that's how I feel about it. The music we used to play was sent to me by. It was sent to us by someone who watched a show regularly. We would frequently talk about North Korea, and some of that music was sent to us, and we just got a kick out of it, so we'd play it on occasion.
We actually should get it back for when we talk about North Korea, because some of those songs were just unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. They were great. I don't know if we still have them in our archive anywhere, but...
Can you imagine? Yeah. Attorneys have archives of like cases they've worked on and depositions and litigation. We need to check our archives to see if we have the proper North Korean techno music that applies for stories to stories about Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, we're talking about our archive saying, do we still have that North Korean music, or do we still have that crazy gay preacher? Well, where is it?
Let me delve into the file for George W. Bush's crazy quotes and analyze that archive.
Yes. Oh, God, that one is, it's too big. We don't have the data storage for that.
We've run out of space, actually. I bought 3,400 2 terabyte hard drives, and we're still just short of the amount of space we need to store George W. Bush quotes. But so to get to Evan's question, I am not a fan of K-pop, and I have no favorite artists, and Lewis taking an incredibly aggressive stance on K-pop, calling it an abomination, and we will see what kind of wrath that unleashes onto him from the audience. Make sure to join us on today's bonus show, davidpakman.com/membership, and get your Hatriot Mail 2015 calendars. They will not be available forever, ladies and gentlemen. davidpakman.com/calendar15. Buy just the calendar or get a free calendar with your yearly David Pakman Show membership.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.